to order the Public Market Advisory Commission meeting. It is January 18th at 5:32. Stephanie, could you do the roll call, please?
Of course. Commissioner Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Bogue. Commissioner Young.
Here.
And we are still waiting for Jeff. All right.
Okey-doke. The next item on our agenda is, the approval of the agenda. Could I get somebody, first of all, are there any changes, modifications, additions, anything like that? Okay. So could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Could I get a second? And Jeb seconds. And then all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, and the agenda is approved. So the next order of business is the first public commentary that's limited to agenda items only.
All right. Is there any members of the public that would like to participate? The instructions are to press the *9, and then I will allow you to talk. This is one of two opportunities. If you don't want to participate now, you can wait till the end as well. And we'll just give a few moments because there's the lag with that. And I am not seeing any hands as of right now.
Okay, well, we will move on to our next item, which is the approval of the minutes from the December meeting. Are there any changes, modifications, anything like that? Okay, so could I get a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting?
I move to approve.
And a second. Emma seconds, and everybody who approves the minutes from the previous meeting, either raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Great, perfect. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties.
Oh, you're good.
All right.
Glad you're here.
Everyone is present.
All right. So the next item of business is the regular business, G, and these are agenda items. General updates.
Great. So the annual applications have gone out. They are in the mail. People should be receiving those momentarily. Of course, as usual, they are due back to us March 1st. And as we spoke about last time, brand new vendors, folks that have been with us since July 1st, who have a current application on file, will not be having to redo it. Because again, it seems redundant if they're very new to redo it all again, unless there's a major change to their business or application that would necessitate that. So that is in process. We are still, of course, accepting rolling basis vendor applications for other people, but our big push right now is the annual vendor stuff. Hats off to Hannah for doing a large bulk of the work with stuffing envelopes and all of that good stuff. It was, of course, a collaborative effort, but did the lion's share of the actual physical mailing part. So thank you, Hannah. And that's all I had for that.
Great. And we have the staffing updates.
All right, so sadly, Hannah is about to go on the 2-month city mandated exclusion from working. It starts next Monday. As I mentioned last meeting, we're doing a special workaround to enable Hannah to be paid to do the MIFMA Market Manager Certificate Training Program, as well as attending both the Argus Conference and the Michigan Farmers Market Association Conference, which are both 1 week apart in the end of February, early March. We are still waiting for sort of the last administrative aspects to be ironed out from HR, but that is something that will be coming. So Hannah will be able to work through Monday, but will be not at market this Saturday due to the trainings beginning already in person in Flint, both tomorrow and Saturday. So that is a sad reality of this paradigm that we still find ourselves in, unfortunately. And then Hannah will be back at the end of March to markets. And then also the second piece of this is we will be hiring for that third position, hopefully in March. Still need to figure out exactly what timeline we're looking at there because we don't want to have all staff off at the same time, leaving just one person at market, which is the situation we are about to be in as of next week. So hopefully I don't get sick and other things don't occur. But this, is an unfortunate continuing issue that, we are hoping will have a long-term resolution in the future, but as of right now, does not. And I just wanted to make sure, I know for new folks, is that clear what I'm talking about in terms of like the 10 months on, 2 months off? Okay, great. And that's all I had for that item.
Do you know when the job will be posted for the other
I
assistant?
haven't figured it out yet because it still needs to go through legal. Sometime, March to April is sort of our target. Because again, I don't want to have the 2 additional assistants be off at the same time because that, doesn't necessarily help us. It would be better to have it staggered, but still need to figure out those specific details.
And any new 2024 events that you'd like to update us on?
All right, so Hannah and I put together the skeleton outlined schedule of events just yesterday. So there's no surprises, but exciting things. We are hoping to expand back our kid activity offerings and what that could look like. There's been some hiccups, as we've mentioned in the past, like trying to partner with previous community partners that we had worked with prior to the pandemic. But just the ironing out the kinks with that. And in terms of that, we would be also tapping into Hannah's experience and expertise working at the Natural History Museum and being really involved in kids programming there, and trying to bring more of that sort of kid-centric programming back to market, because we had a sort of a story time person last year, but it was not really that successful. And this is something that we've wanted to bring back, and now that we're far enough away from the height of pandemic shifts, although not actually, but you know what I mean, that we're able to kind of get a full schedule of events. So that's something that we're hoping to make more robust this coming season. But other than that, we're anticipating doing the food truck rallies again, doing the cooking demos again, although a twist on that will be not just chefs, but also tapping into community members that will want to be involved in that, and running that event ourselves instead of partnering with Edible Wow as before. And I did just apply for the Michigan Farmers Market Association Food Safety Grant again to see if it could help fund that cooking demo series. Other events too we talked about was Flower Day, maybe fusing what had been in the past a CSA Day into more of a broader Earth Day celebration that could have a CSA component that is more relatable to all vendors instead of just a very small fraction of folks that have a CSA. But other than that, we're planning on doing similar things, still trying to pursue, paying musicians, and none of the rest of the stuff has changed. But that was sort of our thoughts going in to, this 2-month time where Hannah will not be at market. So I don't
I
know if
like,
folks had any questions or any input on that. I know it's not fully concrete yet, but feedback welcome.
think the Earth Day, exploring the Earth Day event is a great idea. It sounds like that would also be a great opportunity to partner with anybody else in town who's
Yep.
doing Earth Day.
Yep, and we thought since it would also be a precursor to the Wednesday market starting for the season, as well as a precursor to Flower Day, that it would, feed into those events and we could maybe use the same, say theoretically master gardeners or people from the museum teaching kids about plants or anything else that could, go between both sides of events.
Great. Facilities and repairs.
All right. So we don't really have any specific updates on this other than we are having a meeting tomorrow with folks from parks as well as the park planners, as well as the people that were involved in the assessments to make a more concrete plan moving forward because, time's a wasting to fix the market office. So, not really very many updates there. I guess the only sort of minor update, which is sort of facilities, is that, somebody pulled down some of our Christmas lights right after we put them up. But, it's okay. It happens. But that's something that soon will come down anyway when the weather gets a little better. So not a super big deal. But don't really have any other updates beyond that aspect.
How are the bathrooms doing in this cold weather?
I mean, they're good because there's so few people at market, interestingly, especially last weekend with the extreme cold. So they seem to be holding constant, but definitely nothing has been fixed. It's just, I think the less use has sort of put a pause on us noticing the broader issues that we saw before.
Okay, and the next thing is the vendor survey.
All right. I know Hannah compiled some info about that to share with you all. And Hannah, would you like to share? Cool.
Okay, so I compiled some results from the vendor survey. We had 63 responses out of 130-ish vendors, so about half. Those responses include a pretty even distribution of smaller farms, larger farms, artisans, value-added food. Anything else you'd like to add included a lot of different things, but I will try to synthesize that at the end here. So just in terms of our distribution of products, I think we briefly went over this. Our still number one thing is vegetable farms, followed closely by flowers and plants, value-added products. A lot of folks in the bottom thing is value-added products, but they didn't answer it that way. So a lot of value-added products. Okay, we move on to stall usage here. This was 3 questions on the survey. How many stalls do you use? Most people use 1 stall, and very few use 4 that answered the survey. A total of 4, including people that only sometimes use their 4th stall. In terms of how many permanent stalls, a little more evenly distributed. That little green piece is 2 people. This question, the pie chart looked a little gunky because people answered others, so I made a different one going through everybody's individual responses. So 62% of people thought that vendors should just have 3 stalls permanently assigned. 20% said 4. A good amount of people didn't answer. A couple people said 2 stalls only, and about 6.8% want the current system. So only people that are grandfathered didn't get 4 stalls. Everyone else continues with 3. But you can see it's a pretty clear majority of people think just 3 stalls should be allowed. Okay, before I hit market hours, any questions so far? Okay. Market hours was also 3 questions. So most busy, 10 to 11, 11 to noon, and 9 to 10. Kind of looks like a little skyscraper there. And this looks like pretty much the opposite for least busy hours. So just to compare, most busy to least busy. So the afternoon really falls off for people, and that first hour is not so busy. Mid-morning, early day. And that pretty much is what we expected, I would say. All right, market hours. So this one, no one said market should be open even earlier all year long. That was kind of a joke, so that's good. Most people said market hours should remain the same. Some people categorically said market opens too early for me. And then another large chunk is that market should have later starting hours earlier in the fall before January. Because with daylight savings, it gets quite dark out at 7 a.m. or before when people are setting up. So that might be something to take into consideration for the future. All right, our winterization question. Most people pretty on board for winterization, which we know. We would all like to winterize as well. I think it's just a matter of things that are a little bit out of our control. Even people that already attend winter markets said it would be helpful. Some brave souls said that if you winterize, it doesn't matter to me. I don't think we need to. That's pretty fun. Go them. And a good chunk of people said they would expand their product offerings if we winterized or their growing season. All right, the plastic usage question. This is a little harder to parse through. Most people at market use some form of plastic packaging. Some people are indifferent about it, but a lot of them would like support reducing their plastic, or all these 1% ones are about how people are individually limiting their plastic use or trying to reuse things, or explaining why they can't afford to not use plastic. Okay, for the anything else you'd like to add section, about a third of additional commenters, so the people that filled in anything else you'd like to add, asked that the market close at 2 instead of 3, or suggested it, citing that 8-hour market is longer than many other markets in the area, and that there's a significant drop off in customers at 2 p.m. and a drop off in vendors by that time as well. A couple people commented that vendors should be staying past 2 p.m. because when they leave, a bunch of other people leave, while other people were like, don't enforce us leaving before 2 p.m. because there aren't customers. So a little bit of a, yeah. Another third of commenters asked for winterization. Some emphasized they'd lengthen their season at market or their growing season on their farm. Some said that winterization not being a thing is why they don't come in the winter, why they end their season at market. About a fourth of those extra comments asked for later starting hours, citing that early market hours have pushed out some smaller baked good places that have to bake overnights, some smaller like food folks, or that early starting hours in the fall are the reason why they end their market season. So once it gets like pitch black at 7 a.m. and it's chilly, they stop coming. But they would come if we started at like 8. Several commenters, and I know we've addressed this here, but I wanted to pop it in, wish for a cleaner market in terms of the bird netting issue and offered some solutions to that. All right, that is all I had for the survey. I hope that was a helpful overview.
And it really was. Thank you very much for putting that together and for summarizing all those different comments, because I know that can be challenging. So I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel. I always like to keep track of things like this. I would love to get a copy of the slides if that's possible, just to throw in my file. It's always useful for me to help look back at. So just send them as PDFs or whatever's easy for you. Thank you very much. Any
Thanks,
discussion?
Hannah. That was great. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about any of the findings of our survey?
I have a question about what the plastic question was asking, like what it was trying to get at as far as, because most of the other ones seem about market decisions and things like that.
Right. So that particular one came from the fact that we've had multiple vendors as well as customers ask us if we could have a plastic ban at market. And it was, understanding that that's not necessarily realistic for a host of reasons. One being the Food Safety Modernization Act regulations, which things have to be sanitizable. So even if you wanted to use, say, like a paper pulp quart that everyone does anyway, it's supposed to have a plastic liner or a sanitizable liner in it to be like in compliance with the food safety stuff. So there's, I guess, the idea being that just to capture the constraints and sort of the hidden elements that are holding people back from either being able to completely eliminate plastic or reduce it. There's also been some discussion with other people about, whether or not there's grant funding available to help farmers transition away from plastic packaging, given the fact that, margins are already so low with selling produce and other items. Passing an additional cost onto the farm, is making a lot of people, hesitant to, I guess, get rid of plastic completely. So it really was just trying to capture, that sort of how many people are burdened by this idea of it's really costly. But yeah, so that was sort of the idea or the context behind that question.
Are there any things from the survey that you would think about moving forward on? Stephanie, in terms of things like the hours and stuff like that, will that be part of your planning discussions in the future?
I mean, the hour one, it's a tough one because most people said that hours are fine as they are, and that sort of is the majority. So like I'm not sure what we really could do other than, maybe exploring, when it's November, maybe having a later start, although, that runs into the situation of potentially making it confusing for messaging for customers, because we have, continual shifts. Whereas right now it's an easy message that, January is here, Wednesday market's done, we shift to 8 o'clock, and just sort of figuring out, how to traverse that would be my main sort of, roadblock on that particular question. Especially when so many people are saying that, they think it's fine.
Emma, did you have something to say?
Yeah. Well, it looked like almost as many people said that they thought it should start later in the fall as thought it was fine. I think it was 42% and 49%. So pretty split there. And I think people will figure it out. I think people are confused anyways about the changes every time they happen. They don't know that they go together anyway.
Right.
So I don't know how much, if almost half of vendors are thinking that it would be helpful.
Yeah, so it's 46% market hours should remain the same. 42% later, starting earlier in the fall, and then 11% just saying market opens too early for me. So I guess you could also interpret it as over half of people think markets should start later in some capacity. But I guess the way we asked it, and good for a survey next time, was that I gave two options that somewhat
Right.
overlap without people
Exactly.
having a clear choice. So it's hard to
Right.
say what they actually are meaning. But it is kind of split.
And a different way we could address that too would be to kind of have it's like a soft start, soft end, where it's because it's somewhat for an accounting issue in terms of for people to come and kind of register their full day, then they have to be there at a certain hour and leave not before a certain hour. And if we shifted that window that the market begins at this hour, but it's like with an hour flex on the end in the beginning, then would that, and if people have customers that come in early, that's great. And that could be a solution, in which case our accounting would go at a certain hour, but it officially begin at the current hours, but the sign in and sign out would be finalized at, or begin and end at an hour in, an hour out. And that could be a way to accommodate. I don't know if that's feasible or if that would be cause more issues, particularly for people who do come during those final hours. And I'm one that comes late oftentimes, and there often are. I kind of expect that only half the people will be there, because that's kind of how that's in practice how it seems to go.
Right.
People sell out of stuff, and so you get what you get. And I get that, and I'm not I don't feel that's a horrible thing. That's on me more than on the vendors. So in some ways, is there a way to have some of these things reflect the realities of how they go? If that's their slow time, and again, I'm not a vendor, but I have empathy for them if they've been there for a really long time and starting super early that morning. It's like, oh my God, that 2 to 3 hour must be just hell. I don't know. And I could see how the morning one for certain vendors too could just be extra hard if there were a way to do that. So
Right. Well, I would say with like the flex start sort of thing could be logistically very difficult because we won't know if someone's not coming. So there might be, prominent stall that person is just running late, and we'll have like a huge gap in an area of the market. And again, we would have to change the the rules yet again. But so that's part of it. And the other side is, the way that the rules are written is if you sell out, you can go. But I think what that leads to, though, unfortunately, is that people see somebody breaking down, then they start breaking down regardless of whether or not they are sold out. And it's really hard to police that when it's like everyone, all of a sudden, it's like this chain reaction and everyone's gone. So in essence, I feel like that flex and early part already exists. So I don't necessarily think it would make sense to like have it be closed at 2, because then again, that's just going to push everyone breaking down earlier. Because like that's not going to change. But in terms of the earliness, yeah, I mean, obviously, like I don't like having to get there at 5, but I'm much more willing to go with like what people need, what people want. The other side of the late start is that, for some people, they're super early bird shoppers because parking is free early in the morning, outside market. So, and on Wednesdays, there are people that are shopping before work. So, like I can see both sides of it, and I think it's a complex issue. But that's why I think we chose this sort of lower hanging fruit aspect of the fall after daylight savings, shifts that could be a time where it could compromise for a lot of folks. So to me, I think like that's probably the easiest change, whereas the rest of the stuff seems a lot more logistically complex to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also, flex beginning seems very difficult with parking. The flex end, the by practice flex end already, that's a huge contentious thing because people want to get out and
Yes.
can't get out and pressure each other to leave. So it's a whole or not leave. And
Yes.
so if that's already at the flex end, flex beginning seems like it would be worse.
Yeah, I think it would be hard. I agree.
So then for the after daylight savings, starting an hour later, does that seem like something to explore? Or is that something that is kind of on the, should we put that on our kind of collective agenda
Yeah, I mean,
for?
I think that needs more engagement.
Mhm.
Because again, a lot of people maybe just pick that, not necessarily knowing like what that means. Like, because we didn't necessarily say like how much later it
Mhm,
would
mhm.
start. We didn't necessarily define that either. So I think maybe like a follow-up. And if there's anything else too that came out of this survey that we want to do a follow-up, I think that, totally makes sense before we move forward into any tangible, you know, steps towards changes.
Okay, any other comments, questions, anything like that? Okay, great. Thank you. It's really nice to see those survey results. So thanks for doing that. So I think it's useful. The next thing is our PMAC officer elections.
All right. So how we did this before was a quote secret ballot, which means you just email me your choice for chair and vice chair. But before we do that, of course, I don't know if anyone wants to give a pitch for themselves or for someone else before we dive in to that.
I think in the past we've thought about nominating people too for
Sure.
different positions. So
Yep, that can happen too.
So I guess for me, I've been on here for the longest time, and I think this is my last year, this next last one. I've been chair, I've been vice chair. It's to give you an idea of the job if you're new and interested in it, it's not hard. It's mainly about kind of running the meeting, and you do become a contact person with the market manager, with Stephanie. But also that there's just trying to keep things in order. Lisa's done a really good job of trying to organize the information better this year too, which is really helpful, kind of keeping a collective record and being the steward of that record is important because there's a lot of decisions just like today. The thing that we had with the survey is that it's like in the future, it's like, did people want that? I don't know. I remember differently. And then it's like, oh, well, we have data. And so sometimes that becomes a useful thing to look back through and become an archivist in some ways for that too. So that's part of what that entails. So that's just the give you, and then the role of the vice chair is essentially acting as backup for if the chair's not there. Then you get to play that role for the day. You get the gavel. Again, it's not awfully complicated. It's just a little execution of Robert's rules in terms of how to actually this seconding and voting and just kind of maintaining the agenda is a big part of that. So
and
I don't.
I put my Robert's Rule cheat sheet, not that it helps me at all, but I put it in the Google Drive folder. So I can remember the language, not that I ever do, but it's there. And for whoever becomes chair, I will transfer ownership of the Google Drive folder to them.
So I wonder with this if any of the other people who haven't been chair are interested in potentially taking that on, or if it feels I'm fairly new or not something you've got the bandwidth for. If you definitely don't, that's good to know. If you're on the fence, it's good to know. If you're like, yeah, that could be kind of fun, that's good to know too. So any thoughts?
I just joined and definitely don't have the bandwidth.
How about you, Jeff and Jeff? Jeff? Oh, you're muted, Jeff.
Oh, Jeb, you're muted.
How about that? How about that?
That's
Yeah,
better.
good.
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is still fairly new to me. I think it's probably a little premature this year for a position of that nature. But bandwidth is something that could be fine in the future. But just I want to get a little bit better handle on what's happening here.
And how do you feel, Jeff? I might take that as his bandwidth.
Yep.
Well, I would like, if nobody else wants to step up, to nominate Peter, since this is his last time. I did look up your termination on the city website, Peter, and it looks like your position goes through 2025 of May of 2025.
Oh,
So
okay, great. So I'll be okay. Yes.
at least that's what the city says.
Yep.
He says. Yep. Okay. Yep.
So I would like to nominate Peter for chair.
Second.
Good. We can then vote. Stephanie
Yeah,
can send out the
Same.
stuff.
There we go.
Oh, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, I just said the same.
Okay.
Then for vice chair, I might nominate Lisa, for, since given people's bandwidth and expertise for that, then we can run that through, or we can continue with that and then see how things go, and then prepare to hand off the reins.
Yeah.
Or Jeb, if you want to do a year in training, you can do a year in training
Anyone
too.
wants to, but
Yeah, I think I'll watch another year unless we have other alternative. How's that?
All right,
okay.
great. Okay. Sounds good to me. And then Stephanie, will you send us an email about this too, to register our votes?
Our secret votes.
Oh, you're muted.
You can just send me your vote by email. It does not need to be any special format or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to
You
make
can just
sure.
reply to the email that I sent the agenda out to make it easy.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay.
And we
All right.
will, of course, announce it at the next. I know the suspense is going to be pretty strong, but
And note
was-
that you can vote for anyone. You don't have to vote
Yes,
for someone.
yeah.
who's nominated.
It is true.
So there's you
Although-
have
although if someone says they don't have the bandwidth, that would be mean-spirited for them to win. So, all right, great.
All righty. So we are now on to the updates on the continuing conversations. First one is the bylaws revision for PMAC.
Yes. So this week I checked in with Remy. Our revisions went in front of the Parks Advisory Commission. I believe that was a last night meeting. And council member Radina is still interested in sponsoring those changes to the ordinance, to be able to expand the membership as well as put in the term limits. Everything else is easy, does not need the ordinance update, but we are moving forward with that. I think council member Radina just needed a few more pieces of information, but that has been sent to him, and we are moving forward. And that is so not all the way there yet, but on the track to be there.
Nice to hear that it's moving forward.
I guess to add to that too, one of the things that we added in there was a disclosure of conflicts of interests, which
Right.
it's not actually passed yet. So we're
right.
not doing that yet, but that's something that I started talking to Stephanie about, trying to roll
Yes.
into to see if we can get that protocol, that process, so we can make sure that we recognize on this body that we do, and it's fine to state them.
Yep.
So.
And I heard back from legal on that, and they said it doesn't need to be a form or anything like that. It could be as simple as, sharing what the bylaw states about the conflict of interest. And then you could just, again, send an email correspondence to me if you have like a documented conflict of interest. And that would be sufficient according to the legal team. So.
Right, yeah. So the intention is to try to make it into an annual process, just so that, and actually too, for me at least, as a council or as a member of this body, that I kind of forget as to who's associated with what, and also if there are other weird relationships, it's like, oh well, I don't run this, but my cousin runs XYZ farm, and that's why I'm advocating for them all the time. Well, that's
right.
There's a potential conflict of interest there. So there's some of them that are obvious, some of them may not be obvious. And so just being upfront so that everyone knows, and that if that does come up, they're like, hey, wait, do you need to do you have to recuse yourself to this? And not like, oh yeah, you're right, because I've got a conflict. So
Yep.
it's just being totally above board and trying to be totally clear with that. We haven't had problems with it, but I've heard of other boards like this which have, and so it's trying to short circuit that to make sure that we've got a process in place to make sure that we're all aware and we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's to make sure we've got that going.
Yep.
Alrighty, great. And then we have the producer only subcommittee.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had a chance. I've had several meetings with Stephanie, most recently yesterday, and she provided me with a lot of wonderful information that kind of got me up to speed on where things had kind of ground to a halt at. And I believe that was probably last summer-ish, but I'm not sure about when it kind of stagnated. I've got a document dated February 20th, 2020, with a lot of notes in it. So it's been revised since then. So obviously it was, underway. I clearly think I need to discuss with some of the other vendors in the areas, the farming and the growers, et cetera, that are not my expertise, which kind of brings you to a point. It is a subcommittee, and right now I am a subcommittee. So I think I need some other people with me, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. I certainly need to ask some of the people that with more expertise in their areas about this particular forum. And then I think that's it. So this is a good time of year for me to get into it, although we don't have as many vendors at the market, but I can certainly cruise around and start poking around. And am I correct, Stephanie, that I need to have, or Lisa, some multiple people helping with this?
I mean, that would be the best.
As
And
a
the idea,
subcommittee?
yeah, exactly. And the idea before was it would be made up of vendors. So in addition to committee, to PMAC
Cool.
members. So you
All right.
will not be alone.
So not just PMAC members, but also just vendors.
Right.
That are not on
Just
PMAC.
regular vendors. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. That makes it a little easier. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So I would say, I think the thing to do here is for me to do that in the next month and then present this document that we have at the next meeting. And then any input I've had since then kind of kickstart it. It looks like there was a lot of progress already made. So I don't know, if there's going to be a lot of change, but we'll see.
Yep. And then I think I just need to give you like the notes because I gave you, I think, the outline for the meeting that happened before. And I think I just need to give you the notes that I took of during that
Sounds
meeting.
good.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds cool.
I also took notes during that spring. I think it was right after I started here.
Yep.
So I ended up taking more specific notes than usual because I didn't know what was going on either. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Certainly there's a lot of, just reading the information that's been accumulated already, as an artisan, these are not things that I'm privy to, but I certainly can see the issues with them and the concern about them. So, it certainly makes sense that we're talking about it.
Yep.
Are there vendors from certain categories that would be helpful? I remember a lot of discussion about plants or honey. Just want to raise that question.
Yeah,
well, I know that Stephanie. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, Stephanie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that Stephanie had talked to some folks before, and we could, maybe get her list of who exactly she had spoken to for what.
That's Stephanie.
That would be helpful.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, there are a number of categories.
Not myself in the third person. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Great.
Thank you, Jeb, for taking the lead on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the market office repairs.
And with this, again, there's not really that much information I can provide given that the meeting is tomorrow. And I hope that there will be a lot more info forthcoming. In the interim, if folks have not been to the market, they did put up the salt barrier mat. I'm not sure exactly if they really thought through the whole winter aspect, because I'm having to put salt like directly on it because it's actually much more slippery than the sidewalk is. But you know, luckily it's protected right now by probably a lot of snow because they don't clear it unless I clear it, that particular piece of the sidewalk. So, but yeah, so should be information forthcoming after the meeting tomorrow. Because as I said, given the timeline, needing to really get moving on this in the spring to start these repairs.
And do you know what the intention is from that, or the outcome of that meeting is supposed to be? Is it actually making a decision, or is it just kind of batting around ideas?
I mean, it's the first real meeting with the proposal that the consultants provided after their assessment. So I'm hoping, at least my my wish is that there's a specific game plan that comes out of it, that we'll know exactly what we are doing, what we are not doing, and some sort of timeline. You know, whether or not that actually will occur, it's hard to tell. But that is my goal, at least.
Anything else on the repairs or the office building? Okay. I think that's the end of that list. So we are on to new business.
All right, and I do have an item for new business. And it has come to a head given the weather this week. And I did talk to Jeb briefly about this, as well as Emma briefly about this. That the fact that we don't have an inclement weather cancellation policy is problematic, to just be very clear. And I think an easy way to address this would be to start with things like extreme wind chill, or, you know, like scientific definitions of a wind advisory. And that could be very cut and dry. So it's not a perception of staff sort of, you know, just making a call. It's based on, you know, that specific data, or those, you know, weather advisories that we're getting. So that would be something I think it would be worth pursuing, you know, what that could look like. Because again, this is something that would have to go through a full recommendation and rule change to get into place. But that would be something I would love to start exploring through this body, and, you know, what that could look like. And it doesn't have to be limited to wind, but that's something that's been directly relevant. You know, last Saturday there was 4 vendors plus a food truck. This Saturday, I feel like it's going to be very similar with the double digits negative wind chill as of right now. You know, and that's the thing, like, I can't just call the market. Like, there is no recourse for me to be able to do this. I guess I could, but that, you know, there's no rule supporting me making these decisions. So, you know, that would be nice, especially because we know the winds aren't getting any less. And last Saturday was one of those days that even indoor markets were closed. You know, so being winterized would not have helped in that particular instance. It was just, you know, dangerous all the way around. So stay tuned for that.
Do you know if it's like AAPS, this public school system, what rubric they have for deciding? I wonder if there's a way we could, because that's the closest equivalent, at least that I know of, that I come in contact with, that has a policy that has to decide that for closures.
Right. But I feel like, you know, their policy, there's a lot more factors riding on that, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of a lot more people, you know, walking that are children. And whereas as it is now, you know, there's no one compelling a vendor to have to be at market. You know, they can just cancel. You know, there's nothing about that, but it's just more like taking pressure off staff, and, you know, making it perhaps unsafe for staff to try to get to market, for customers that are coming to market, you know, because there are people that want to support, but, you know, all the way around, we don't want there to be a 50-mile-an-hour gust and a tent lands on someone. You know, this is not, obviously, I shouldn't have to say these things because I know you're all on the same page, but like, we just shouldn't have to have this as even a possibility, because it puts a lot of stress on me, puts a lot of stress on staff, puts a lot of stress on vendors, who like are waiting to see if market's going to be called or not. And that could be a lot of sales lost if we have to do it at the last minute. So I think, and I did talk to Remy about this, and he was totally interested in this idea of, going off of what NOAA says about this and going off their specific advisories would be pretty cut and dry. But it's a good question.
So I guess one of I think it's great to think about this and then to think about what NOAA's saying. And NOAA has the weather advisories and then the weather warnings.
Right.
And I don't remember last Saturday, was it actually a warning that was out? Emma, do you know?
I don't know that. I was just going to say the Ann Arbor Public Schools is -20, which seems pretty not just like cushy on students walking to school, but it's like the temperature or the wind chill reaches -20, school wouldn't happen. And that seems for normal humans, not just like
right. Yeah. And for the wind, I know it's I believe 30-mile-an-hour sustained is sort of the low end of it, but we would have been in that realm of definitely with the 50-mile-an-hour gusts for sure. Because there's both those measures, the sustained wind speed as well as gusting up to X amount. We would have been in that. And because a highest per hour wind speed, we were at 29 miles an hour around 10 to 11 a.m. And that was, definitely when we were trying to help White Lotus hold their tent down. We were having to bring out extra weights. There was a lot of things. And interestingly, I was ready to call market early on Saturday. And then all of a sudden, a couple of vendors were like, oh, no, we're good. We'll stay here. So it's okay. It was just kind of ironic because back to that original conversation, it's people don't want to stay to the end of the day. When I want them to, but then when I don't want them to, they want to stay. So it's just this hilarious inversion. And I did have people from White Lotus say, thank you for still being open. We would have lost thousands of dollars. So there is also that other side. Even if it is a safety issue, there's that pressure on some of the vendors to feel like they would lose too much in sales.
They do have their own farm that they sell at and Argus. True. So of all the vendors, they probably have the most outlets to still make money if markets.
Of course. I'm just sharing, that's just what they told me.
Stephanie, is that, I guess my question about that, as another vendor in a different area, I can return to the market with my candles. As long as they don't get shattered all over the floor, I can sell them the next week.
Right.
But some White Lotus that's been baking all night and they've got their inventory, that if they don't sell it that day, I'm pretty sure that it's not got the shelf life to make it next week or even to the next market. So I could see, maybe that thank you because we were going to lose money might also have to do more with them losing inventory that they've already baked than just actual sales that day. There's an actual loss of the product, and then there's also the loss of the opportunity to make money. So there's that,
Yeah.
But to me, it seems clear the biggest issue, and I think Jeff would be a great person to ask about this too. He's got so much more experience than I do. But the wind, we can bundle up our tents, we can dress well, we've got access to heaters, but the wind just destroys. That's the big issue.
Yep. Exactly, and that's why I thought we would focus on that first, as sort of an easing into this. Because I think, again, that's the most dangerous as of right now.
Yeah, I would say that the wind is definitely a bigger problem than the temperature.
Yep.
I guess the other issue that I was just thinking of in the conversation is sort of when does market get called? And so vendors can know, is it going to be 5 o'clock in the morning, or like White Lotus, if they knew the night before, and there may be different conditions under which the market gets called, but it does seem like if NOAA had issued whichever is, I think the advisory is more severe. No, the warning is more severe than the advisory. If there's a National Weather Service advisory in effect through Saturday morning, it seems like that should just be a no-brainer to call the market. under those circumstances, and then we can think about the wind on top of that. But I didn't make it to market this last weekend because I really didn't feel safe on the roads driving, even with all-wheel drive. We weren't plowed out yet.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's like sort of what was interesting around the market itself. There really wasn't that much snow at market, but all of the surrounding neighborhoods, everywhere else, had much, much more snow. I mean, I live in Ann Arbor Township. We had like 6 to 8 inches. So when I got to market, less than a 10-minute drive away, it was like, wait, where's all the snow? So if it had just been a snow or cold thing, like didn't make sense to call it, but the wind for sure, was problematic. And that's sort of the thought process here. Because that's pretty much the same thing that happened on Christmas Eve of last year, or 2022, last Christmas Eve. And in that particular case, there was people that had special orders, couldn't stay home. So that was another reinforcement of this conversation needed to happen. But
And are we thinking that the wind issue would be the same policy would hold even in the summer when not everyone's necessarily using tents? Because I could see that being contentious when everyone has, their full produce for the week and they're like, it's squash. Why can't I put it on a table? So I can see that being,
Jeb, would you like to tell folks about your experience in July that you told me about yesterday?
I don't know if Jeff was there or not. Frankly, it was a little embarrassing, but we had a I think it was July, but we had a storm warning.
It was end of July.
Depending on what weather app you were looking at, 30% storm and 3, right? And by like 2:15, it was looking like, I think this is going to happen. Let's slowly start cleaning up. And I know personally I had everything down, so it was okay. But I distinctly remember walking by one of my vendor friends, and the tent was still up. And I said, we need to get that down. And as we were taking it down, the sirens went off downtown, and an alert came over our phone, 80-mile-an-hour straight line winds. Seek shelter immediately. Well, it was too late, for that tent in particular. But we're talking about the tents. The tents are a problem. But when you get winds over, I don't know, 30 or 40 miles per hour, it's not just the tent that's flying around. It's products, it's plants, it's broccoli going 40 miles per hour through the air. I mean, it's a different animal. So, my thought on that, by the way, I was still there, right? So shame on me for not having a good handle on it. But vendors are there for a reason. They're there to sell, and sometimes we need, guidance from someone like in this case Stephanie or their assistants who are accessing the weather situation, be able to during the market when we're selling. So it's I do like the fact that maybe a market manager could come out and say, hey man, it's 2:00, there's a big storm coming, I know you want to stay, we're closing. And that has a benefit that I think shouldn't be underestimated or undervalued. We need to be protected from ourselves sometimes.
Right. And in that particular case, unfortunately, I was up north, so I wasn't at market to be able to say that, and sustained, an incredible amount of damage at my house with probably 20 trees down, including on my roof. So, that was a very special case situation. And so something like that, yes, I think definitely in play. Also air quality, although this is something else we would talk about later on with this. Is there were some days where the air quality this summer, because of the Canadian wildfires, were so bad that there was at least one day where we were in the purple on the air quality index, which was definitely considered very unhealthy. People should not have been outside. There was an advisory. But again, since we had no policy, there's not much we could have done in the moment. So these are things to be aware of in our continuing conversations about this.
I will say with the air quality thing, vendors who wore masks, I think, were fine. So that was one that was pretty easily remediable if people wanted to remedy it. But a lot of people were just very irate at the idea of doing that.
Right. And then I guess it's the issue of the safety with customers. People might not be aware of what the weather forecast is, and like having it open, it makes it seem it's also that sort of semblance of safety too at some level. Which, can be something to think about.
Yeah, I think I could maybe distill it into two areas that I see. One is, high winds. The threat of high winds is something to be considered moving forward. And then the other is changing weather during the day. A lot of these thunderstorms, you don't know they're going to happen when you're going to work. You don't know. You're at the market, you're setting up, it's not forecast. So those are the two areas I think that are of concern. Yep. But I would also say, Stephanie, tell me if I'm wrong, but like this is once or twice a year, maybe three times. Right. And I don't, you brought up one Thanksgiving, or excuse me, Christmas Eve last year. There's the one, last week. And it seems like there's one day a year that this might come into play.
Yep. I agree.
So just to reiterate, I hear the conversation talking about criteria for canceling the market, but then also like an early close of the market when tornadoes are coming through. That high winds is a real consideration. I do think that if there's a NOAA warning already in place that's going to affect market time, that seems like that's another another variable that we should consider in that. Yeah. Okay.
I guess one thing I might add too is that I just kind of to tie this back to the winterization, that there is you can kind of generalize it to winterization in terms of a technique there could apply for a summer wind blast and potentially for a winter wind blast. And if that becomes really the deal breaker is the wind that shuts the market down, the cold makes it unpleasant. It's better to have an operating unpleasant market than a non-operating market. So that might be a slightly different criteria on which we evaluate that moving forward, given the severity of this issue. So,
right.
Okay. Anything else on the future ideas about creating a cancellation closure policy for the market? Those are great conversations. Great. I just had a couple other things. We had talked about scheduling an in-person meeting. And so thinking about if we do that quarterly, what I really want to think about is this is a time of year when it's easier for the vendors to attend an in-person meeting.
Not
just because of work.
Not necessarily because of the roads, actually.
Well, but because of the work schedule. It's not planting season, it's not harvest season, those sort of things. So would like to just open that up for conversation and explore possibilities.
Yeah, we talked about potentially just putting eventually I think I proposed doing it the 4 times, then that was challenging for scheduling wise, but then it came out to be as to kind of working it or at least establishing the next one. And so that might be a more tractable one. So if we're trying to put an anchor in, if it's in, say, March, would that seem doable?
So Emma's on a research trip. So I guess, Emma, the other, you're on a research trip. Would you be able to attend online during that research trip? Because
if it was a high stakes meeting, yes. If it's a low stakes meeting, no, because it's the night before I fly back on like 20 hours of travel. So
okay.
Or if we did it on April, would that be better for you? Emma, would that work for you?
I think it should. I think it's just the March one that I'm. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And does that seem like that's a credible time from your
April may be difficult because council chambers is going to be closed for 2 weeks for IT upgrades, like right in that window. So I think if it might be hard, because it's like we couldn't get it before because someone was using that. I don't know if the alternative room would be available.
What about May?
We could think about that.
We could also think about next month, February.
Would February work for people?
Yeah.
So we could try. What do you think, Stephanie? I see your.
So this would be February 15th then is the date.
I don't know. I don't know if it really makes sense to have an in-person meeting in February. I mean, the weather is just so iffy. If our experience of this week, and having to drive places where I wish I did not have to be driving.
Yeah, except next week it's supposed to be 35 degrees all week.
Actually, I see too that
I would feel more comfortable with May than with February personally.
I'm actually going to be away in February too. So,
Okay.
um,
Okay, let's talk
fine.
about May 16th then would be the in-person meeting. And Stephanie, if I remember the process, we're gonna need to vote on this.
Yep.
Okay,
should we
So-
vote now?
yeah, let's do it. Let's just get it done. So I need a member to have a motion
I make a
Um,
motion to meet on May in person.
in person for the May 16th meeting. Great. So could I get if any more discussion about it? I think we've already discussed it.
Nope.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Could I get a second for that motion?
I can second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. I think we're unanimous. We will try an in-person May meeting. Great, thank you. And then Stephanie, I know Remy's really busy, but I would like to open the door to have him come join us for a meeting that I would love to meet him, see what the he's thinking about for priorities and things like that. So
All right.
anything else for new business?
Nope.
Okay. Then we have our second public comment.
All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to provide comment about either anything we discussed in this meeting or things that are not on the agenda? I see a hand. Go ahead, state your name, unmute.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Oh,
We can sort of hear you. Perhaps.
sorry, they're muted again too.
Well, I would have to ask them.
Can you
there
hear
we go.
me?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we can hear
Can
you.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering about the copy of the survey results could be put online or survey out as an attachment to an email or
Yeah,
something so that it's
I really can't understand what you're saying. You're pretty garbled. Can anyone else
Okay.
make that out?
I was wondering if the
Yeah,
survey results
I can't understand. Yeah, it's really, really garbled. I'm not understanding.
Can the results of the survey, can you hear that better?
I heard something about the survey.
What's that?
Can the results of the survey be emailed or somebody with an attachment? Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, and then, I heard about the idea of starting the work at November and December is always something that seems to be like a good idea. That has been tried in the past, it's been a number of years ago. But what happened is Christmas still came in a wanted to, and vendors that have been coming for years still came early. And so, I didn't get enough of it starting later.
Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. I can't. It's very garbled. If you send me an email with your thoughts, I can share it with everybody, or you could also just send it directly to the commission. I just really cannot understand you. I'm sorry.
All right, I don't have the contact out of the commission, but I can send it to you.
Okay, yeah, if you send it to me, I'll share it with them. Yep.
Okay, all right, well, that's what I
Sorry
do.
about that.
I'm gonna, that's one of the difficulties of not having an in-person meeting.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Well, we tried our best.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else interested in participating in public comment? I am not seeing anyone else.
All right, so our next item is adjournment. So it is 6:42 and the PMAC meeting is adjourned. Hannah, I just want to say we're going to miss you over the next couple months. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing the survey and all your help. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah.
We'll look forward to
Yes,
seeing you
thank
when
you.
it's warmer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yep.
For
See
sure.
y'all in a couple months.
All righty.
All right, stay warm, everybody.
Yeah. See you at the
you.
market soon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, bye.